Good morning and welcome to the Ask Ilsa podcast. For under our pleasureforhealth.com website. You can find all of my previous episodes of this podcast if you want to join in and hear some other really enlightening and thoughtful discussions about relationships and how they affect ourselves, our lives, our ability to be intimate, and pretty much anything is a go for this podcast to do with connecting with other people and ourselves. So today, I wanted to take the opportunity to delve into something that has come up for me recently about being with a partner. And this is actually the fact that we are all separate human beings. That might not be news to you, but we all have our own perspective from being in our own body, from having had our own background, from living our own journey in life. We have a particular perspective. And the fascinating and challenging thing about being in a relationship, and this could be any close relationship, is that we have to get introduced to someone else's perspective. I mean, I guess we don't have to, and this is what we're going to talk about a little bit, but we have the opportunity to be introduced to someone else's perspective. And what I would like to kind of chat about today, and if anyone out there has comments, please feel free to post those in the chat. Is that in this age of social media where everything is curated to fit our particular interests and our way of looking at the world, is that we're kind of in danger of becoming overly narrow-minded, overly self-centered. And, therefore, this really affects our ability to have close and intimate connections with other people because we are basically in a one-dimensional way of looking at things. So whether you agree with me or not, let's have a chat about this and about our own perspective and see how does that play out in our relationships. It came to me this because I actually work with abusive relationships and, especially people coming out of verbally abusive relationships and the kind of long-term effects that this has on people. And one of those long-term effects is that the verbal abuser quite often discounts or disses, basically. It does all the diss words, the person's sense of their own reality. So a verbally abusive person or a manipulative person will often take the reality or the feeling or the thoughts or the values of the person that they're with and take those away from them. Say, well, you don't really feel like that. Well, how could you see it that way? Of course it wasn't like that. This is what really happened. And they kind of discount your sense of reality. And so someone coming out of an abusive relationship often has a difficult time, trusting their own sense of their reality. And if someone is extremely narcissistic, that person's sense of reality is the only reality. And so this brought up an interesting thought for me because, there's quite a few people talking about the fact that our culture these days is becoming more narcissistic. We tend to go with that type of, those type of values in our culture. We often have like one-upmanship. We're, putting down other people. We're countering, we're topping them, we're, saying our way is right and their way is wrong, we're criticizing, we're hard selling our viewpoint and we're intimidating other people's viewpoints. So, this may get you a win if you are in a kind of reality where you see relationships like a game or, and you want to win. You get a point every time you are right, or you get a point every time you make the other person doubt themselves. And, many people live in a reality where that is what relationships are to them. And I'm not going to say it's good or bad, but what is really interesting then, and how I work with people that are coming out of abusive relationships, is that if that's what your partner was doing, if that was their reality, then we need to get on board with that's their reality and not try to fit them into our reality, which might be quite different. There are many of us out there, I hope that I'm one of them, that is thinking more along the lines of a relationship is kind of co-creational, that we're being creative together, that we're able to learn and grow from having someone that isn't the same as us and being able to listen and hear their viewpoint. Um, and again, I'm not saying it's better or worse. There's a lot of things about having a really strong sense of your own reality and being able to overpower, kind of take over a room with your reality. That's very powerful. This is kind of something that a leader might do. You can walk into a room and you can get everybody to agree with you on some topic. This is, not a bad thing to be able to do, but there is a benefit to also seeing the type of people that want a reality where relationships are co-creational, where relationships are more balanced and equal in the input from both partners. So this is where it's an interesting mix. I don't know where we're headed as far as our culture goes. Some days I feel like we're heading toward, more of a everybody's important culture. And sometimes I think we're heading towards a top down structure of one person's reality is going to become all of our reality, or, you're kind of out. Anyway, I'll leave that for people more versed than I in social topics. But to look at our personal relationships, we can actually make a difference on the world stage, if you will, around what types of relationships, what values, and how do we want to interact with and connect with other people. And real intimacy, I would say, in my understanding of real intimacy, it would need to have that possibility from both people's perspective, that they are open to really understanding and learning about and living into and sharing their partner's reality. And some of the questions that you might, show that you're curious would be kind of like, oh, what kind of reality are you living in? Is there anything about that reality that you want to share with me? We might want to ask those types of questions with a real intention to share that reality with someone. My partner and I are actually quite different, as are most people who get together. And often the way that I interpret something, or the way that I'm hearing things, or the way that I'm looking at the world is very different from the way that he does. And one of the great benefits of being in a partnership with someone is that I get to realize that my way is not the only way to see something, and that my partner can say, wait a second, have you looked at this? Have you noticed that this other way of looking at this particular topic might open up something for you? And often I'm like, oh, you know what? I never thought about it like that. And I bet you there's other people that are thinking about it like that. Or there's other people that have even other ways of thinking about this topic. And I never questioned myself before. And, I'm grateful to my partner for helping me to question my own sense in a way, in a nice way, and again, this is different than that verbal abusive kind of putting down or criticizing or saying that, what you're thinking and feeling is not true or not valid, but saying like, oh, that's an interesting perspective, and I can hear how that's valid for you, and here's how I see this, and here's what I'm feeling about it, and here's another way of viewing that. We become more able to let go of our own perspectives, and it's interesting because if you look at NLP, like neuro linguistic programming kind of stuff, often people are saying, let's make this framework that we're going to live in. And if you're a coach or something, you might offer a different framework for someone to live into. And this is interesting about coaching. It's almost telling someone to change your sense of reality and look at something else. And this can be a really great opening. So you become more open-minded. You can change maybe something that's negatively impacting you, your business and or your relationships, and kind of open up and go, oh, I could frame this differently. Instead of saying my partner always argues with me about, little things, we could say, oh, my partner has a different way of doing things, and maybe that opens me up to seeing that my way is not the only way, and that there might be some benefit in doing it a different way. So, there's this very interesting way of spectrum of manipulation as human beings that we do. And, being able to let go of our own perspective is both a great gift, and we don't want to let go of our own perspective to the point of giving into someone else's perspective that we haven't intentionally taken on. So I think that's where know yourself, know your enemy, you want to understand what your values are and what your perspective is. And you want to actually be curious and open-minded to find out what your partner's perspective or reality is, so that you can put those together and make a conscious choice about how you want to shape your reality. Do you want to reshape your reality to take in some of a different way of looking at things? Or do you go, you know what, I really like the way I look at things, and I'm going to stay there. Now, the one thing about relationships and intimate relationships that we do need to be aware of is that if I'm going to stay solidly in my sense of reality and my partner is in a different reality, and we are attempting to have an intimate relationship, it's not going to work that well if we don't find any crossover points. And this I can say again from an emotionally abusive sort of relationship standpoint, could be that my sense of reality is that this is that relationship is a really wonderful place, that partnership is a sacred contract, and that I'm fully invested in this family or this relationship. And my partner's sense of reality might be, well, I'm here because this person is useful to me. I'm only connected to this insofar as this person or these people are useful to me, or feed my ego, or support me in some way. And if and when that doesn't continue to happen, then I'm not invested in this. So they might be coming from that place. And so those two senses of reality are quite different, and will just lead you to almost be living in parallel universe with your partner. And I call it sometimes the fantasy universe, like, especially for the person who's like, this is I'm married, it's a sacred place, and everything is, I'm going to put everything into this, and of course my partner is also putting everything into this, and I believe that everything is good. This is a reality that we can kind of delude ourselves with, because we may not be seeing that our partner's actually living in a different reality where they're like, as long as this relationship is serving me, that's great. If it doesn't, I'm out. I'll look for another relationship that serves me better. And so, they may be thinking along the lines of, well, doesn't everybody relate like this? Doesn't everybody just look out for themselves and their needs to be met? And, if my partner wasn't getting her needs met, why doesn't she leave? I would leave. So they might be looking at it from that perspective. And so it's really interesting to kind of say, oh, okay, these are two very different things. And often, these types of relationships where you have such different realities, with a lack of awareness that they're in different realities, they may come to couples therapy or something like that and be surprised that it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because these two people are living in completely different realities. These two people are in different paradigms. They're not connecting in any way, and they're not even trying to fix the same relationship, because each of them has their own view of what this relationship is. And I see it, with people all the time, in that, if I talk to both partners separately on their own, without the other person around, it's like they're talking about a different relationship. One of them is like, oh, we have this great relationship. We have dinner together. He loves me so much. He brings me gifts and this and that. And from the other side, it might be, well, she's pretty good. She does what I ask her to, and this is what I need in order to have my job work. I need to have someone that I can take to the dinners. I need to have I want to have kids, and I want to have a house and a family, but they're not so invested in the actual partnership, that they're just looking for what it looks like to the outside world. And these are two very, like I said, such different realities. So, we have to kind of look at this and look at what are we supporting in our culture, in our society. Because when it comes down to it, when many of us are frustrated or disappointed in the fact that our society seems to be pretty nonchalant about individual rights and freedoms and support, and it's kind of like, yeah, it's just whatever's best for the system is what works, and there's this kind of homogeneity and lack of interest in having other viewpoints. And when we are spending our time in personal relationships that follow that pattern, I think we create larger societies that follow that pattern, and potentially vice versa. If we have a society that supports, somewhat one-dimensional ways of looking at things, then we end up with relationships that are, fitting one way of looking at things and not really open to other ways. So that's kind of my inroad into saying this is, saying, let's look at our personal relationships and let's see how we can shift our capacity, if we want to shift our capacity for taking in other ways of looking at things and be open to other paradigms. And this means that we actually have to listen to our partner and really listen to what they're saying. And we need to be clear about what we are saying. And this can be really difficult, because some of our really deep held beliefs about relationships are coming from that place that we don't even know. They're coming from a place like, well, if my partner walks out of the room in the middle of a heated discussion, they must not value or love me because they've walked out of the room. Now, from the other person's perspective, they might be actually saying, I love and respect this person so much that I'm going to walk out of this room so that I don't say something that I regret while I'm in a heated moment. Do you see how those two realities are really different? The same action is happening. They're having a heated discussion and one person walks out. And if one person is thinking, I love and respect my partner so much, I'm going to walk out right now because I need a timeout to calm down before I can continue this discussion. And the other person's thinking, this person must not love me or respect me because they've just walked out. Those are two things then. So the only way to really come together and understand is to be open to another reality possibility. So if you said, hey, why did you, what was the reason that you walked out of that discussion? And if they said, well, because I really respected you and I didn't want to say something I would regret later, being open to noticing that. And if they asked you, well, how did it feel to you when I walked out? And you say, well, it felt like you didn't care about me and that you didn't respect me because you walked out in the middle of a conversation. And they're like, oh, I didn't realize that I would have that effect on you. That wasn't my intention, and this and that. And then we'd have to actually communicate and really take in, okay, so how can we come to an agreement of our two realities and put that together? And one possibility might be that you have a signal, like you do the timeout motion and you say, need a timeout. I love you. I need a timeout. And you go and you take your time out and you come back. And that has reassured the other person that there is still love and respect in the room, but that I also need to take a time out. So, there's ways that we can accomplish this ability to expand our understanding of other realities. And this is really one of the benefits of close relationships. So I think that I have found personally also working in these types of close relationships has been extremely beneficial for me to know myself, to realize what reality I'm actually thinking and living in and believing. And then, oh, that's not the only thing. There's someone else with a different way of looking at things. So I'd love to hear how other people find their close relationships. Have you found it expanding to be in close relationships? Do you find that you take your reality and just put it on top, like project it onto whoever you're with, and you find that you basically end up in the same relationship over and over and over again with different people? If that's your experience, it's highly likely that you have a sense of what reality you're living in, and you're just, a new actor is taking the part of your partner every time, but you put them into the same role. So maybe you have to open up the script and let something new be written in there. There's my metaphor for the day. So if you've enjoyed this podcast and you're interested in these types of thoughts and explorations and curiosities about relationshiping, about self-development, about finding our best sense of self that we bring to the world, I hope you tune into my podcast again. You can find it on Podbean or iTunes or Spotify, all the major YouTube, all the major places. And if you are looking to find out more about me and my relationship coaching, do check out pleasureforhealth.com. So that's www.pleasureforhealth.com. Check out my information, different things that I'm up to there. Join my mailing list. And other than that, I hope you have an opening and challenging day, and that your sense of reality is not only supported, but maybe also opened. And we will see you again next week.